Okay, I think we will just get started and let people continue trickling in as they come. But welcome everyone. Thanks for being here with us. Today we're going to be presenting on understanding current workforce shortages and how communities are building their talent pipeline. We've got two amazing presenters today. We've got Kresha and Bethany Quinn, and I will let them introduce themselves and say hi.
Very good. Thank you very much, Audrey. I am Ron, and I'm the current COO and CFO, also one of the original founders of Golden Shovel Agency. I've been working with communities for a long time, and the workforce shortages is an issue that I'm very familiar with. So excited to talk through that with you today.
And hello, everyone. I'm Bethany Quinn. I am the Vice President of Strategy and Content Development for Golden Shovel. And I am very excited to share with you today more information that can help your communities to tackle this pressing challenge, especially as we get to some of the best practices that we're seeing nationwide.
And just a couple housekeeping things really quick before we get started. This is recorded, and I don't know if you saw it in the chat, but we're also live on Facebook right now. But we will be sending a recording to everyone. It'll be posted on our website and YouTube channel. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to put them in the chat and we'll answer them when we've got the time.
Great. And thank you, Audrey. And just a quick shout out to our amazing marketing director, Audrey, who puts these together and makes sure they're all well lined up, organized, and has everything ready for download. So that's always an incredible support for us. So again, Bethany and myself, and then let's just go into the first part.
Absolutely. So we know that unemployment rate has recovered rapidly since the start of the pandemic. But simultaneously, there are 1.8 million people that are looking for an active job, but there are 3.5 million people fewer in the workforce. Part of that we know is because there's been an extensive increase in retirement. This is putting pressure on all of your local businesses. Economic developers need to find workers to support their existing businesses, and it's a critical part of any attraction strategy. That's what we're hearing now as we work throughout the country, is that it's really difficult to get investment if you can't also show businesses that there's a strategy in place to support their workforce demands.
So there's lots of terms being tossed around right now about what is this, the Great Resignation. I know one of the attendees today, Mark Lotman, who I've worked with in the past and read many of his materials. He put out originally the first book I saw, When the Boomers Bail. We've been watching these trends. We've been watching this happen. This is no surprise. And one of the things when I talk to communities and I work with local leaders, I remind them that we've been talking about this confluence of events for a long time. And the reality is the pandemic just amplified and accelerated that timeline. We were going to be at this exact spot. It was just a matter of, was it going to happen in 2019, 2022, or 2023? And if you look at the trends worldwide, it's pretty compelling that this isn't going to change for a while. So you're hearing everyone talk about the Great Resignation right now. If you look, 4 million Americans quit their jobs in July of 2021. What's interesting is we see that between 30 and 45-year-olds increased their resignation by 20% between 20 and 21. However, 20 to 25-year-olds decreased their resignation between 20 and 21. And if you look at your own family members, I have a 24-year-old daughter, I have a 27-year-old son, and then I have a 20-year-old daughter, and then I have some other ones behind them, but they're all looking at this workforce and this labor market with a lot of uncertainty. I have a 27-year-old son who's out of the Air Force, and he's struggling to find a job that's going to take his skills and he can go into an analytics position. There's a lot of entry-level jobs, but still inserting yourself into some of these companies above entry level is still a bit of a challenge. And the shift to remote work, which was very appealing. In fact, we had done a number of webinars and we'd actually put out some white papers and some research on this. I had authored an article a couple of years ago about winning the workforce labor battle, and all talking about this remote work population. Well, resignations are highest in tech and healthcare industries, and they've been driven by the extreme demand from the pandemic. But that remote work doesn't fit everything. And we have to look at what that is and what that's doing in the workforce. So I actually do not think this is the great resignation. I think this is the great reshuffle. This is, and if you go out and look at a lot of LinkedIn's information, and I watch a lot of their economic stats, because that's actually when people move, it's actually more telling than when the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics talk. Because if you change your status in LinkedIn from change job to change locations, I can follow that quicker. But what we're seeing and what LinkedIn has pointed out is how we work, where we work, and why we work are becoming some of the three priorities, and things are changing. And the workers now are being tipped in their favor on how they want to seek jobs in the terms they want. Remote and hybrid working is here to stay. I mean, we may as well just all understand that right now, that this style of work that we have is empowering the workforce, keeping them on the move, and many companies are using it to their advantage. There's challenges with it, there's benefits to it, but this style of workforce that we have is here to stay, and we have to figure out how we're going to empower those workers. Remote roles are highly attractive. It's interesting if you look at this chart here that making up only 16% of the open jobs is remote roles, but attracting over 40% their share of job views and 44% of applicants. So even though there's not as many open jobs, you can see there's a lot bigger supply of people looking for those remote jobs. And so communities and companies are going to have to be very, very vigilant about their marketing. They're going to have to be very, very thoughtful, and they're going to have to go after. They're going to have to be aggressive because the workers are out there and they're looking. Job changing is up 37% over 2020. People are, the loyalties, we've been talking about this for a long time, the stick around for the gold watch, or the pensions, or the parachute, all of that, those days are mostly behind us. When I talk to my son and my daughter's generations, they have no qualms about being able to pick up and leave quickly. They don't have a lot of stuff accumulated, and they can move, and they can use the remote workforce ability to quickly get to the jobs they want. And more important for them is the location and the quality of life and where they want to live versus being pulled in by a company. Trend number 3 that we're seeing, workers feel empowered. They demand more out of the work. And that is something employers have to recognize, is when they are bringing workers in who have the ability to work wherever they want, they have the ability to find their own purpose. If their work is not meaningful to them, if it's not something that is fulfilling a part of their life, they just see no purpose in being there. And that's something that employers have to recognize. They can't just offer the job, just offer the 9 to 5, and just say, punching in is good enough. Work-life balance is one of the top factors for most job seekers. When I talk to communities around the country, I talk to workers, I talk to many of the people between that 20 and 35-year-old. For them, their quality of life is number one. After all, think about it. They are a remote worker. They're not tied down. They're going to figure it out on compensation and benefits. And they want to decide who they hang out with in their culture. So that work-life balance is key, number one in their life. And employers need to understand that when they start seeking the next workers for their workforce.
Well, and we think that economic developers, a lot that we work with, can leverage that as well, because so many communities have really strong quality of life assets. And those of you who don't have heavy traffic volumes, for example, can use that understanding to try to attract people who want to live and work somewhere without a huge commute and who maybe has easier access to the things in life they would enjoy doing.
That's right. And a couple of communities that I've been in consulting with lately, one of the things that I remind them is don't be afraid to talk about your volunteer organizations. Talk about the churches in your area. Talk about the breweries. Talk about the quality of life, because when these young families move in or these younger workers move in, they want to join organizations. They want to be part of the movement. They want to be part of the change of that community. And all of those are things they're going to look for. So give them that opportunity to see, hey, our community has an opportunity for you to volunteer. Maybe we have, we've got the improvement of the park process, or we've got this program. But these young folks want to be engaged. These new workers want to have a stake in how the future is going to be improved. And that's part of who they are. My last slide before I turn this over to Bethany is attracting your remote workers. You need to have a strategy. And the biggest thing that I can emphasize with you today, and you're going to hear this, is you need to get started. If your community is not actively marketing and putting together plans on how you're going to get these workers and this workforce, you're already behind. I can guarantee you we're working with communities every day who are trying to figure this out, and they're bringing groups together to do this. So the benefit from the Great Reshuffle, as new remote workers look to improve their quality of life, they're going to move out of high cost areas. Can you show that ROI? Can you show why moving into your area is going to save them money and give them a better quality of life? When you attract workers into the community, many move with a spouse or a partner. Many of them move in and they bring people. Attract gig workers and entrepreneurs with small businesses who are also operating remotely. Don't be afraid of bringing that knowledge base in. These people are very intelligent. They're very creative. They're coming in with a skill set that is fantastic for your community. One of the questions that I always ask when I survey and I go in and I do interviews is I ask the city councils, or I ask the economic development boards, would you rather have me bring in 100-person company, or would you rather me bring in 100 remote workers? And the reason I ask that question is we have to think about what you're trying to attract. We can get the 100-person company that pays taxes, and those 100 people will come in. But if you bring in 100 remote workers, I don't have to find the building. I don't have to find the site selection. I can immediately get those families in and get them into your churches, get them into your schools, get them into your volunteer programs, and they become community members much, much quicker. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of water, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Bethany.
All right. Thanks, Ron. So we know that remote work is obviously here to stay, as Ron mentioned, and it's incredibly important to have that as part of everyone's strategy. But the reality is that there are still a lot of very important jobs in all of our communities that cannot be done remotely. They do require people coming into the facility, to the plant, to the office every day. So what are the obstacles to workforce participation? Those are questions that we are asked regularly and are being discussed in all of our communities, because right now, most of us have an issue with people sitting out of the workforce. Not that they couldn't work, but they're sitting out. Why are they sitting out? So some of the main issues that we're seeing are retirement. There are people that are retiring earlier than they previously had thought. Education. So there's people going back to school, or young people who are graduating, and instead of entering a technical training program or going straight into the workforce, they're going for a 4-year degree. And while that knowledge is going to value them and the community later on, it's an issue when you're trying to get workers in immediately. Family responsibilities is another big issue, and disabilities, which we're going to go into each one in more detail. So retirement. Now, one of the things that we're encouraging economic developers to do in their conversations with business leaders is to be creative with their older working population. So instead of having it be a straight, you either work your 40, 50 hours a week or you retire, consider offering alternatives to that solution. There's a lot of people who simply don't want to continue working full time, but would be quite happy to be able to do a job share with someone else, or be happy to stay on in a consulting type of a role where maybe they're able to be called in for special projects or to help with training. Even though that person may no longer be able to fill that 40-hour-a-week position, if you have a lot of people looking at retirement, if you could get some of them to work in different ways, you're going to feel less of a pinch, as especially throughout the entire community. So those are conversations that need to be had. Education. So this is obviously a big issue because we need to get more young people into the workforce faster. And some of the ways we can do that is by leveraging the technical training programs that are already available in communities through internships and apprenticeships. We're going to go into some examples later of communities who are using these very effectively to try to reach the youth at a much younger age, to where they are able to establish connections with businesses in the community. And as a result, some are choosing to work right after graduating high school and continuing their education simultaneously. Family responsibilities. We saw such a huge difference in the number of men and women who were out of work following COVID, with women getting out of the workforce at a much greater rate, primarily due to responsibilities for caring for children and for aging parents. Our white paper has a tool that makes it easy to identify whether your community, this is on a county by county basis, has the childcare and other opportunities in place to make it easier for women to continue to work. It basically breaks down the labor force participation rates for women based on the age of their children, if they have any. And so you're able to see those disparities, and you're also able to make comparisons to maybe other nearby counties, which is great if you're trying to find solutions. That's an excellent place to start, seeing the data of maybe who's doing it right and has less of a gap in the labor force participation rates for children, mothers of children. Go ahead. All right, disabilities. We have actually had some webinars on this in the past because of the fact that very often people with disabilities actually can be trained to work in a different field, or they could be given an accommodation by an employer that makes it possible for them to get back into the workforce. This is an almost untapped group of workers in your community that most likely could contribute, but maybe they just can't contribute in the exact same way as someone who doesn't have a disability. Things like creative scheduling to allow for doctor's appointments or simple accommodations can make a big difference about whether or not people can remain in the workforce. COVID is another situation that we're dealing with, that the EEOC recently has put out guidelines talking about when COVID could be considered a disability. Because of the long-term effects that some people have struggled with, it has taken them out of the workforce. That doesn't mean they don't want to get back to work. There just needs to be accommodations that make it easier for them to get back engaged. And economic developers can play a role by working with their partners and engaging the services of people like the National Institute for Disabilities, who can help to put programs in place to get people back to work. So some of the considerations to keep in mind which is relevant for remote or in-person workers, is that flexibility is going to be critically important. Going back to disabilities and people with family obligations, sometimes it's as simple as being able to offer multiple types of shifts, regardless of the position, so that people can make allowances to do things like get to doctor's appointments or physical therapy or pick up children from school, whatever that may be. Flexibility has not always been the strongest point for employers, but now it's becoming critical, and you don't want to lose workers simply because you're so rigid in what scheduling options are required for staff. Again, job seekers are choosier about finding the right fit. So economic developers can help businesses by showcasing what they're actually like. That's a really big challenge with the manufacturing industry, for example, because there are ideas of what manufacturing entails, and very often they're not accurate and they're negative. You know, a lot of people think of manufacturing as a very dirty and just kind of messy environment, when that's not the case. So we have examples of economic developers that have done things like given youth tours of their local facilities or created videos so people can see what it's actually like to work at these employers. So that's the type of things that economic developers can do, so that when people are being choosy and selective, the businesses in their own communities rise as a good potential because people can know more about them. Work-life balance being important, as we mentioned, for those of you who are blessed with low commute times and great assets like parks and access to maybe a lake or fishing and hunting, whatever that may be. Those are things that you should really talk about and promote, because if people can get off work and easily get to their hobby, that creates balance and might be what pushes somebody over the edge to choose working in your community over someone else.
Bethany,
Yeah.
on that point there, one of the things that I often point out to our clients and other people we work with is this is a great time to start to pair up with your tourism and other entities that may have the same goals, rather than treating everything in your community like a silo, like Chamber of Commerce, economic development, tourism. Start to combine all three of those, because the workers and the people that are Googling your community, they're already doing that. So work together and make it easier for the people trying to get into your community.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Quality of life is something that has been important for this new generation of workers for quite some time. Again, COVID has increased that because people have evaluated what's important to them. So any economic developer who's not talking about their quality of life assets, I think is shortchanging their community, because we all have them. And you need to make sure people understand what they are so they can determine if that's the right fit for them to be in your community and how they can really enjoy living there, not just working there. Again, women are going to come back to work, but we need to make sure that communities are preparing strategies to make it easier to access childcare, after school care, so that it is less burdensome to do so. And then obviously a surge in entrepreneurship and the creator economy. A lot of people that are out of the workforce right now are still actually contributing to the economy, but they're doing it for themselves. So organizations that find ways to promote entrepreneurship and attract entrepreneurs are going to be ahead. This can be something as simple as making sure that there are flex space available within your community so that entrepreneurs have drop-in desks or resources where they can come together. Even if it's not a full-scale incubator, there's still hybrid solutions. Maybe even if you have open office space in your own economic development agency building, making some of that space available for entrepreneurs could be a good idea. All right, so what are other communities doing that are working? I think this is the most important thing we can learn from, because they've already had proven results. Springfield, Ohio. They are doing an awesome job of trying to promote working in their community. For those of you who aren't familiar with where they are in a location that makes it very easy for people that live in Clark County to commute to Dayton or Columbus. So historically, a lot of people have done that. They've lived in Clark County and they've commuted out. Well, their objective has been to get their own community members to reconsider working right where they are, close to home. So they've developed this fantastic initiative Clark County jobs, where they are doing an active job of promoting their opportunities. They've done so through a new website, through a massive paid ad campaign. They have videos featuring opportunities in the community, which are great because people get to tour different businesses and learn about what's available. And they're also playing a really active role by going directly into schools to make presentations, connect students with local employers and industry and tech schools. And they even have an internship program where they're actively getting high school students and college students enrolled in internships. York County, we talked about manufacturers having a negative reputation sometimes. Well, they're trying to change that through Manufacturing Day. So they have done this successfully for several years, and they introduce high school students to local manufacturing companies and also do things like take them on tours of the facilities so they can see for themselves. Through content, through social media, and through an awareness campaign, they've also been talking about people who have started at local manufacturing companies, have gotten their education even paid for while they work there, and have continued to grow in the company. So not only are they trying to reach students early, but they're also trying to show them that there are career pathways beyond just entry level.
Bethany, we have one comment, and I think it's an interesting one, and we can talk a little bit about how Golden Shovel approaches this, but the 40-hour work week concept is also hurting people trying to find a balance between work-life balance. If a person can get a job done in 30 to 35 hours instead of 40, why are employers so rigid on having to put in their full 40 hours? It's a great question. I hear it a lot. Obviously, some employers have some constraints. If you're a manufacturing company that has a production line and you have certain things that you have to put out and you have to meet your deliveries, that might not be as conducive. But I will say this, like at Golden Shovel and other companies that we've been involved with, we don't really put any constraints on people's times. They have the flexibility. We treat them as leaders in the company, and we allow them to lead their areas. I will say not every company is comfortable with that, and it's a different management style. It really is about letting go of some of those tendencies to over direct or to over manage your people, and that can be very uncomfortable for some companies. So what I would say is that, that's a transition. It's going to take some time. Just like I would say the opposite of this, sometimes I see remote workers who need to manage people that have to be in the office, and they struggle with that. So it's a give and take on both sides, and I think it's a great question. And I want people to recognize, as we emerge through this shuffle and we emerge through this transition, people are really going to learn a new skill set in how they become employers or employees.
Definitely. So speaking of reaching students early, a rural Minnesota SEP is doing something really interesting. They have a mobile learning lab. So this is a big semi-trailer that's filled with 3 classrooms, and they have immersive virtual reality systems that can stimulate actually working on the job. So a student can go put on their goggles and they can see what it's like to actually weld, or to do industrial painting, or do a variety of other trades. So it's a really incredible experience because students are used to using this type of technology, and it's one of the first opportunities they will probably ever have to actually explore what it'd be like to work in them. And obviously there's no risk. So it's not like bringing them into a manufacturing facility where they actually physically have to try equipment, which of course would be risky for the organization. This completely eliminates that while giving them exposure. And because it's a mobile lab, they go to students, not expecting students to come to them. So hats off to rural Minnesota SEP. This is a fantastic idea, and one that we think other communities would do well to follow, really.
Bethany, I'm just going to chime in here real quick on that for 2 reasons. Number one, rural Minnesota SEP is right in my backyard, and they do a great job. But with Golden Shovel and our community-based virtual reality, one of the things that I will say, and I've watched rural Minnesota do this, I've also seen it when we create familiarization tours using the Oculus viewers and the 3D. One of the biggest things is when you have the goggles on, as you see this student here, Look what's not in his hand, his phone. You can't be engaged with distractions. You have to be fully immersed into that experience. And we see that all the time when we bring people into this immersive environment and they look at a community through the 3D world and they have the goggles on and they really feel like they're there. They're not answering a text. They're not looking something up on Google. They're not liking something on Facebook. They're fully engaged, which getting anybody's attention for even a small amount of time at 100% is absolutely critically valuable.
Mhm. Agreed. And anyone who has been in a high school classroom has seen students on their phone constantly, even in school. I mean, it's definitely a big problem. So as Ron said, the opportunity to engage with students in an immersive way where they are literally transported into the environment of doing a specific work, doing a specific trade is really incredible and hugely valuable. And we know that technical schools, community colleges throughout the country have really stepped up to offer training in people's own backyards. The problem is that students don't realize what's available. And even if you tell them, they have no idea what it actually would be like. What would it actually be like to be a welder? You can tell them as many times as you like, but it's not anywhere near the same of putting the goggles on when your mind basically plays tricks on you and makes you feel like you're physically there and physically doing it. So again, hats off to these guys. I think it's an incredible program. So in Shelby County, Kentucky, they're also using virtual reality to expose students to what's available in their communities. Their approach is different than, physically doing the welding or whatnot, as I mentioned with the last example, but they're giving virtual tours of these different manufacturers. And that's really powerful because, for one, it dispels any ideas that are negative for what it could be like to actually work in manufacturing, because you get to see really cool equipment in action. Things like robotic arms that are high technology. You get to see there's the vastness of these facilities that normally, wouldn't be necessarily open for tours. And you also get to see the different types of jobs that are available at these manufacturing facilities. It's not all standing on a line, right? I mean, there's engineers that work there. There's human resources and marketing professionals. So it really is much larger of an opportunity to get involved with local companies than a lot of young adults think. And of course, these are also fantastic opportunities to show adults in the community who maybe their previous position was downsized, no longer available, but there's other ones in the community so they can see opportunities. This also is a great way to try to encourage people to upskill, to go and get additional technical training or what is needed so that they can actually get involved in a better career. College debt. All right. Everyone loves this topic. No, I mean, this is a problem. Everyone knows college is so expensive. And that's why obviously technical schools provide a great opportunity. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunities that do require a four-year degree or an advanced degree. And people are accumulating a lot of debt. Well, in North Dakota, Forward Devils Lake has a program that helps those people while simultaneously recruiting some very skilled workers into their community. So they've partnered with local businesses. And so it's a program where part of the debt's paid off by a business, part of it is paid off by the community and through the state program, but up to $28,000 of debt can be paid off if a worker moves to the community and stays and keeps their job for a certain period of time. So it's definitely an innovative program with a lot of support from the state. If you've been looking into something similar, I encourage you to see what North Dakota is doing. Workforce housing. So obviously this is a clear challenge because if you have companies in the community who are hiring, but you have nowhere for people to live, then you're still at a high disadvantage. So in Fremont, Nebraska, they did something which I found to be very innovative. They raised capital from local businesses and investors to create a fund that would work as gap financing for development projects. So for example, if a developer needed an additional 5% or something to go towards their down payment on the loan, they could apply to get funds from this particular avenue they set up, the Wellstead Fund. So I really thought that was very innovative. The business community got behind it because, again, if you have jobs but no housing for workers, you're going to be short on workers. They have had over 1,000 housing starts over the last couple of years because of this program. All right, we talked about creating opportunities for people with disabilities. In Ramsey County, Minnesota, we have a great example. Merrick is a company or an organization that has clients with varying levels of abilities, and they work with them to help them get on the job training, to practice interviewing, to create resumes. And then they actually work directly with businesses, over 100 in the community, to facilitate the direct placement of their clients. So they know maybe what accommodations those clients may need. They know what the needs of the businesses are, and they're able to actively match the two. I think that program is something that really could be a model for what happens in all of our communities, because again, just because someone has varying levels of ability doesn't mean they don't want to work or that they're unable to work. We just need to be able to make the match between what's a good fit for them and what businesses need. Did we skip one or did we go forward? Oh, there we go. All right. Hey, we got another big bus. So this is pretty cool. This is happening in Montgomery County, Ohio. So for those of you who don't know, they are the largest one-stop employment center in the United States. And they now also have a 38-foot Freightliner, which is a mobile workforce unit. So just like we talked about going directly to students, this mobile workforce bus goes all over. So working with students and working with adults. So they are using technology and the ability to go directly to people to connect them with jobs and job opportunities. They're taking the hassle out of having to come to a job fair, even though they do host those. They're making it easier by going directly to the people. In Gallup, New Mexico, they wanted to make sure that workers had an opportunity to get upskilled without having to be tied to a particular employer. That was necessary for them just to make sure that any type of workforce training would benefit as many businesses as possible in the community and as many community members. So this is a no cost to the actual worker. They get to go through a training that involves classroom and hands-on construction training. Then that gets them placed into an internship, pre-apprenticeship program, or a long-term career. And they've had quite a bit of success marketing that and getting support from the community. Transportation challenges. That's another issue with workforce, especially in more rural communities that might need to attract workers from a wider region instead of just one particular city or community. So in Western Iowa, Midwest Industries was able to begin offering a shuttle service for employees. And this allowed them to recruit out of 2 additional areas. They received financial support from the Region 12 Council of Governments in order to do that. And as a result, this one company had over 50 shuttle riders a day that were being transported to and from work. So, if you think about the companies in your own communities, 50 workers, that could probably make a very large impact in their ability to produce. So this could be a great way to allocate some resources when looking at how to support local businesses. All right, so what if you do have housing and you do have jobs, but you need more people to move? Well, consider offering a down payment assistance program like they have in Phelps County, Nebraska. They have relocated 124 families over 4 years. That's potentially 248 new workers into the community. In some cases, they were trying to target people who maybe worked in the community that weren't living there, hoping that obviously they would move in, their spouse would come, and then that obviously creates another opportunity to hire a local worker. So this has been a very successful program. Again, 124 families over the course of 4 years. And this is a program where they match and the employer matches. So a worker can receive $5,000 in total, with the corporation paying for half of that. Digital advertising. Again, you need to go to where the workers are. And if you're trying to attract people to your community, using a variety of digital mediums is an excellent way to do so. Momentum West used videos that were created, their website, and a digital ad campaign that received fantastic results. In less than a month, they had over 350,000 impressions over Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google, and they had over 4,000 clicks from workers actually looking for a job and considering a move. So there are a lot of ways to reach people outside of your community. You just have to take the opportunity to do so. All right, and create a workforce ambassador program. This is something that really won't cost you anything, or if so, very little. The people who live in your community are your greatest champions. They already live there, they love living there, and they're probably connected to a lot of people, especially online, that don't live in the community. So finding those people who would be excited to become an ambassador, to help promote jobs as they become open, and to promote some of the cool things happening in the community is a great way for you to get additional free exposure.
Bethany,
And
do you
that's
want me
the
to-
end of our best practices, but we do have more in our white paper.
Yes, forgot to mention this in the beginning. Good thing you guys all stuck around, because we've got a really great resource for you all. Maybe some of you have seen us posting on social media about it or sending out emails. Bethany and myself have put together this free white paper that's all about understanding current workforce shortages and how to solve that problem for your community. So you can use the short link here if you'd like. Otherwise, we'll be including this in the email follow-up as well.
So Bethany, we talk about solutions and strategy. One of the things that I want to make sure I highlight to everyone is right now with the American recovery dollars, and I hear this all the time, communities are looking for ways to spend these dollars. County authorities or other government entities have these dollars in their budgets, and they are required to spend those over the next 12 to 18 months. And so we're going to hear more and more about counties and entities looking to spend their dollars. This is a great way. This is a fantastic way to put your community on the map, put together some strategy dollars, put together a marketing effort, and really go after some of these workforces and make a case of why this is a great spend for your community so that you can really push things forward.
Most definitely. As Ron said, there is money out there available right now. Workforce shortages is a real problem. It's not going anywhere. We recommend tapping into those funds to be able to implement a solution. You know, whether it's something like having those VR videos created so students can see the opportunities available in your community, or it's running a big digital campaign to reach external people. Whatever it may be, now is definitely the time to act because the money is available.
We have a couple of minutes. Audrey, we can stay online. I think we've gotten most of the questions answered. If anyone would like to toss a question at us, we certainly have a couple of minutes before we have to close out.
Like we just got a question or a comment. Do you want to read this one, Ron?
Sure, I can see it. So a lot of small businesses can't compete with wages, but they can compete with non-cash perks. This individual said I've been pushing them to think about what those are and include them in their ads. Absolutely. Communities or employers have lots of different ways they can compete. And the new workforce that we're seeing, they're not as cash driven as we've seen other workforces. I see that even with my own kids and their generation. They want a stable job, they want a stable income, but they're not as motivated to go out and really fill their savings account up like other generations. They would much rather take some of that, go spend some time hiking or exploring the outdoors. And to a lot of the credit of my kids, I say, you're seeing the world in a way that I didn't. I grew up thinking you always had to get ahead. They're saying, you know what, it's not worth it if I can't enjoy the world that's around me. And I think that's a great approach and a great perspective.
And Kathy just said they get excited by pet insurance. Yes, absolutely. It's these creative perks that makes people happy. We're seeing businesses do things like making it possible to bring your pet to work, and
Right.
that gets a lot of people excited. Or there are some that are offering unlimited PTO. And what's weird is you think of that, you're like, oh my God, if I offer unlimited PTO, people are just never going to show up for work. Well, that's actually typically not how people are, because we do have some inbuilt levels of responsibility, not just to our companies, but specifically to our teammates and people who we work with. So when we see people offering that, very often there's still conversations on the other side, but people really aren't taking that much time off. But again, it is, as you mentioned, Kathy, offering those unique perks. Also, things like free Friday lunch, stuff like that is attracting more people to work for companies.
Looks like a couple more popping up in the chat. So Audrey just put a link to our latest white paper, and I would offer up, we have a great team, a very knowledgeable team, and they have lots of resources to draw from. And please feel free to download our materials. They're free, they're for you to use. Hand them out, take them to your next board meetings. Try to get some momentum in your community about this. And then if you have questions, reach out to us. We're happy to find somebody who knows something or knows somebody that can help. And we'd love to help you be successful in your communities.
Yeah, and take these best practices, because again, all of these communities have had success using what we presented to you today. The white paper contains more of those. If every community just implemented one of those, you'd be sure to see some measure of results.
And so as we go into closing out here, I just want to take a moment to thank my colleagues. As you can tell, Bethany, Audrey are very passionate about helping communities, and it's that passion that drives us all. So thank you to my colleagues. I really enjoyed the webinar with you today, and I hope you're all doing well.
Thanks, Ron, and thank you everyone who joined us.
Thanks, Ron and Bethany. And again, thank you everyone who's been here, attended.